Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the English Globe. We are very happy that you are here with us today. This podcast is made for students and learners around the world who want to improve their English, while also learning about important issues in our world. Today we have a very interesting topic. We will talk about the relationship between the United States and Mexico, and we will look at the border, trade, and immigration issues. This topic is not only important for politics and economics, but it is also important for people's everyday lives.
Thank you, Adam, and hello to all of our wonderful listeners. It is great to have you here on the English Globe. We know that many of you are learning English because you want to connect with the world, and today's topic gives you the chance to do exactly that. The relationship between the United States and Mexico is one of the most important international relationships in the world. By listening to this podcast, you will learn new words, new ideas, and you will also understand why this relationship matters for millions of people.
Before we begin, dear listeners, we kindly ask you for a small favor. If you are enjoying this podcast, please like the video and subscribe to the English Globe. By subscribing, you will always receive our new episodes, and you will never miss an important discussion. Also, we would love to hear from you. Please write in the comments below where you are listening from and what you think about today's topic. Your opinions are very valuable, and they help us make better content for you.
Yes, your comments really mean a lot to us. We have listeners from many different countries, and every time someone writes where they are from, we feel very happy because we know our message is reaching people all over the world. So please take a moment to share your thoughts with us. You can tell us what you learned, what part of the topic was most interesting for you, or even what questions you still have. This way, you are not only listening, but also taking part in a bigger conversation with other English learners.
Now, let us return to the topic. Why are we focusing on the United States and Mexico today? The answer is simple. These two countries share one of the longest borders in the world, and their relationship influences many areas such as economy, culture, migration, and security. When two nations are connected so closely, their cooperation and their disagreements affect not only their own citizens, but also the world around them. That is why this subject is so important and worth our time.
Exactly, Adam. Think about it, dear listeners. Every day, thousands of people cross the border between the United States and Mexico. Some go to work, some visit family, and some trade goods. The movement of people and goods shows us how connected these two countries really are. At the same time, issues like border security and immigration policies are often in the news. By learning about these issues, you are not only improving your English, but also becoming a more informed global citizen.
And let us not forget the trade relationship. The United States and Mexico are among each other's largest trading partners. That means that the goods you see in shops, the food you eat, and even the cars you drive may have crossed this border. Trade agreements like NAFTA and the newer USMCA show how deeply connected the two economies are. By exploring these topics, we will give you clear explanations and useful vocabulary that will help you both in English and in understanding international issues.
Another reason this topic is important is immigration. Many people from Mexico move to the United States in search of better opportunities. This has created large Mexican communities in American cities. These communities bring culture, traditions, food, and music that enrich life in the United States. At the same time, immigration is a complex issue that raises many questions about law, economy, and society. Learning about it helps us to see the human stories behind the headlines and statistics.
So, dear listeners, by the end of this podcast, you will have a much clearer picture of the U.S. Mexico relationship. You will know about the geography of the border, the history that shaped it, the trade that connects the two countries, the migration that changes lives, and the cultural exchange that makes both nations richer. We promise to keep our language simple, clear, and educational so that you can follow along even if you are still at the beginner or intermediate level of English.
Yes, that is our mission at the English Globe. We want to give you educational content that not only helps you learn English, but also teaches you about the real world. So, once again, please do not forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment about your thoughts. Now that we have introduced the topic and explained why it is important, let us get ready to dive deeper into the first big theme: the geography of the border between the United States and Mexico.
Dear listeners, let us begin our journey into the geography of the U.S. Mexico border. Geography is not just about maps or mountains. It is about how people live, how they move, and how they connect with one another. When we talk about the United States and Mexico, we are talking about two nations that share a border almost 2,000 miles long. This border is not just a line. It is a living space where people, goods, and cultures meet every single day.
That is right, Adam. To understand this border, we should first look at the location of the two countries. The United States lies north of Mexico, and the border stretches from the Pacific Ocean in the west to the Gulf of Mexico in the east. Imagine a line that begins at the beaches of California, moves through deserts and rivers, crosses mountain ranges, and finally reaches the waters near Texas. This long and varied border is one of the most active in the entire world.
If we want to be more specific, we can mention the U.S. states that share this border with Mexico. They are California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Each of these states has a unique relationship with Mexico. California has busy crossings and large Mexican communities. Arizona has desert landscapes that shape life along the border. New Mexico, though smaller in population, also has strong cultural connections. And Texas, with its long border, is home to many bridges, towns, and trade centers.
On the Mexican side, the border touches 6 states. These are Baja California, Sonora, Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas. Just like the U.S. border states, each Mexican state has its own identity and role in cross-border life. Baja California connects directly with California, and cities like Tijuana are famous for being gateways into the United States. Chihuahua has wide desert areas, while Nuevo León is known for industry and trade. Tamaulipas connects to Texas and is a hub for economic activity.
Geography along this border is very diverse. There are deserts, such as the Sonoran Desert and the Chihuahuan Desert, where the climate is hot and dry. There are also mountain ranges, like the Sierra Madre in Mexico, and smaller ranges in the United States. These natural features make the border both beautiful and challenging. Crossing a desert on foot is dangerous because of the heat and lack of water. At the same time, rivers like the Rio Grande, which forms part of the border, create both opportunities and difficulties.
The Rio Grande, which is called Rio Bravo in Mexico, is especially important. It flows along the border between Texas and several Mexican states. This river is a natural boundary, but it also supports farming, wildlife, and communities on both sides. For centuries, people have used the river for water, transport, and trade, but at the same time, rivers can be barriers that make crossing more difficult. They remind us that geography always shapes human life in many ways.
Another interesting point about this border is how close the people are, even when they live in two different countries. There are many sister cities along the border. For example, San Diego in the United States is connected to Tijuana in Mexico. El Paso in Texas is next to Ciudad Juarez in Chihuahua. Laredo in Texas is linked with Nuevo Laredo in Tamaulipas. These pairs of cities are separated by international lines, but in daily life they share culture, trade, and even families.
Yes, Adam. And this is why geography is not only about the land, but also about the people. Because of the long border, many families live with members on both sides. People cross daily to work, to shop, to go to school, or to see relatives. In fact, the U.S.-Mexico border is one of the busiest borders in the world. Millions of legal crossings happen every month. Some are by car, some by bus, and some by foot. This constant movement shows us how geography shapes travel and connection.
Trade is another area where geography plays a big role. The border is lined with highways, railroads, and checkpoints that make trade possible. Trucks filled with goods cross the border every day. Cars made in Mexico are sold in the United States. Food grown in Mexico is eaten in American homes, and products from the United States are shipped south to Mexican markets. Without this border connection, trade between the two nations would be much slower and more expensive.
Let us not forget tourism. Geography also encourages travel for leisure. Many Americans cross into Mexico to visit beaches, markets, or cultural festivals. At the same time, many Mexicans visit the United States to see cities, shop, or spend time with family. The closeness of the two countries makes this possible. The short distance means that in some places, people can cross the border in minutes and find themselves in a very different environment.
But geography also creates challenges for migration. The deserts are dangerous, the rivers can be risky, and the mountains are difficult to cross. Some people attempt irregular crossings, and this can lead to life-threatening situations. For governments, the natural geography makes it harder to control all parts of the border. That is why both the United States and Mexico spend resources on security, patrols, and technology to monitor movement across these difficult landscapes.
Another interesting aspect is how climate affects life along the border. In desert areas, summers are extremely hot, and water is limited. In river areas, floods can sometimes cause damage. In mountain regions, travel is slower and less direct. All of these natural conditions influence where people live, where cities are built, and how trade routes are developed. For example, most large border cities are located near rivers or highways, where movement of people and goods is easier.
Geography even influences culture. Border regions are often places where two cultures mix. In Texas, for example, you will hear both English and Spanish spoken in daily life. Food combines Mexican and American flavors. Music and festivals also reflect this cultural blend. Without the shared border, this mix would not be as strong. The landscapes and locations encourage constant contact between the two nations, making the border region unique in the world.
So, when we think about the U.S.-Mexico border, we should not just imagine a line on a map. We should picture deserts, rivers, mountains, highways, and cities. We should think about families crossing to visit each other, trucks carrying goods, students learning in two languages, and cultures meeting every day. Geography is powerful because it creates both opportunities and challenges. It connects people, but it also creates barriers that must be managed with care.
In summary, the nearly 2,000-mile border is one of the most important features of North America. It links 4 U.S. states and 6 Mexican states. It includes deserts like the Sonoran, rivers like the Rio Grande, and cities like San Diego, Tijuana, or El Paso, Ciudad Juarez. This geography is not only about land, it is about people, trade, travel, and migration. By studying it, we gain a deeper understanding of why the relationship between the United States and Mexico is so important in our world today.
And for you, dear listeners, this section gives you new words and expressions connected to geography, trade, and daily life. You have learned about deserts, rivers, borders, and cultural exchange. You have also seen how geography affects human behavior and international relations. This knowledge will not only improve your English vocabulary, but also make you more informed about global issues. In the next section, we will move from geography to history, and we will see how past events shape the border as we know it today.
Dear listeners, now that we have explored the geography of the U.S.-Mexico border, it is time to look back in history. To understand today's challenges, we need to know what happened in the past. History is like a storybook, and every page helps us see why things are the way they are today. The relationship between the United States and Mexico has a long, complex, and sometimes difficult history. By studying it, we can understand why the border looks the way it does and why the two nations are so closely linked.
Let us begin with the time before both countries existed in their modern form. For centuries, much of the land that is now the United States and Mexico was home to indigenous peoples. These groups had their own languages, cultures, and systems of life. In the 16th century, Spanish explorers arrived and began to colonize large parts of the Americas. Mexico became the center of Spain's empire in the New World. This period of colonization lasted for nearly 300 years, shaping culture, religion, and society in deep ways.
In the early 19th century, Mexico began its fight for independence. After years of struggle, Mexico became an independent nation in 1821. This was a huge moment in history because Mexico was no longer under Spanish rule. However, independence also brought new challenges. The young nation had to organize its government, manage its large territory, and deal with conflicts both inside and outside its borders. At the same time, the United States, which had gained independence from Britain in 1776, was growing quickly and expanding westward.
The paths of the two countries crossed in dramatic ways during the 19th century. One major conflict was the Texas Revolution in the 1830s. Texas, which was part of Mexico at the time, declared independence and later joined the United States. This created tension between the two nations. Not long after, in 1846, the Mexican-American War began. The war lasted 2 years and ended in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which changed the map of North America forever.
The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is a key moment in U.S.-Mexico history. Under this treaty, Mexico lost a large portion of its territory to the United States. This included present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The border we see today was largely shaped by this treaty. For Mexico, it was a painful loss, but for the United States, it was part of its westward expansion. The treaty continues to influence the way people think about history, identity, and borders.
After the war, the two countries entered a long period of adjustment. The new border divided families, communities, and cultures that had lived together for centuries. Many Mexican people suddenly found themselves living inside the United States without moving anywhere. At the same time, new opportunities for trade, travel, and exchange began to develop. This shows us that history is never simple. It often brings both conflict and cooperation, both loss and new beginnings.
In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, relations between the U.S. and Mexico continued to be complex. The Mexican Revolution, which began in 1910, had an impact on both sides of the border. Many Mexicans fled violence and moved north into the United States. The U.S. government sometimes became involved in Mexico's affairs, which created tensions, but also showed how connected the two nations were. The border was no longer just a line on a map. It had become a space where political events deeply affected human lives.
At the same time, cooperation also grew. Railroads and new trade routes connected the two countries. Businesses saw opportunities in agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. Migration increased, and Mexican workers became an important part of the U.S. economy, especially in farming. Cultural exchange also expanded. Music, food, and traditions crossed the border and created new shared experiences. Even though the history had painful moments, it also planted seeds for long-term connection.
Moving into the 20th century, the relationship between the United States and Mexico was shaped by global events. During World War II, for example, the two nations worked together under the Bracero program, which allowed Mexican workers to come to the United States to support the economy during wartime. This cooperation helped both sides, but also raised questions about workers' rights, fair treatment, and the challenges of migration. These issues remain important even today.
We can see a clear pattern in this history. There are moments of conflict, such as wars and territorial disputes, And there are moments of cooperation, such as trade agreements and labor programs. The border, created by treaties and wars, has always been more than just geography. It has been a stage where history plays out. Each event leaves a mark, and those marks are still visible in today's discussions about trade, security, and immigration.
For English learners, studying this history is valuable for two reasons. First, it helps you practice new vocabulary connected to history, politics, and geography. Second, it shows you how the past explains the present. When you hear news about U.S. Mexico trade or immigration, you can now remember that these issues are not new. They are part of a long story that began centuries ago with colonization, independence, war, and treaties. This understanding makes you a more informed learner and citizen of the world.
Exactly, Adam. When we learn about the past, we gain tools to understand the present. The conflicts of the 19th century explain why the border is where it is today. The migration during the Mexican Revolution explains why so many Mexican communities are strong in the United States. The cooperation of the 20th century shows us how both countries benefit from working together. History is like a guidebook that helps us see today's issues more clearly and prepares us to think wisely about the future.
So, to summarize, the history of U.S.-Mexico relations began with colonization and independence, passed through wars and treaties, and developed into a complex mix of conflict and cooperation. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo shaped the border we know today. Later events, like the Mexican Revolution and the Bracero Program, continued to influence migration and trade. All of these moments form the foundation of the relationship we are discussing in this podcast.
And dear listeners, remember that learning history is not only about memorizing dates. It is about connecting stories, people, and events. For English learners, this gives you context to understand new vocabulary, and it also makes your learning more interesting. When you practice speaking or writing, you can use these historical examples to explain ideas. That way, your English grows, and your knowledge of the world grows with it. In our next section, we will move from history to economics, and we will talk about trade agreements and the deep economic ties between the United States and Mexico.
Now that we have explored geography and history, it is time to look at one of the strongest links between the United States and Mexico: trade. Trade means the exchange of goods and services across borders. For these two countries, trade is not just an economic activity, it is the foundation of their modern relationship. Every day, goods move across the border by truck, train, and plane, connecting factories, farms, and shops. Without this exchange, both economies would suffer greatly.
That is true, Adam. The United States and Mexico are not only neighbors, but also each other's largest trading partners. This means that they buy and sell huge amounts of products from one another. If you live in the United States and go shopping, there is a good chance that some of the food, clothing, or electronics you buy came from Mexico. If you live in Mexico, many of the cars, machines, or services you use may have come from the United States. This deep connection shows how important trade really is.
A major moment in this trade relationship came in 1994 with the creation of NAFTA, which stands for the North American Free Trade Agreement. This deal included the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Its goal was to reduce barriers to trade, such as tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods. By removing or lowering these taxes, NAFTA made it easier and cheaper for goods to move across borders. Over time, this agreement created millions of jobs and built strong ties between the three countries.
Of course, NAFTA was not perfect. While it helped increase trade, some people argued that it caused problems too. For example, some U.S. workers felt that jobs were lost because companies moved factories to Mexico, where labor was cheaper. On the other hand, many Mexicans worried that local farmers could not compete with large U.S. agricultural businesses. These debates showed that trade agreements bring both benefits and challenges. Still, NAFTA played a huge role in shaping modern North America.
In 2020, NAFTA was replaced by a new agreement called the USMCA, which stands for the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. This updated deal kept many parts of NAFTA, but also made changes to address concerns. For example, it included stronger labor protections, rules for digital trade, and new standards for the auto industry. By modernizing the agreement, the USMCA tried to keep trade free and fair while protecting workers and industries in all three countries.
The USMCA continues to shape daily life in both Mexico and the United States. Think about cars, for example. Many vehicles are built in parts. Engines might be made in one country, while seats and electronics are made in another. These parts then cross the border several times before the final car is finished. This process is possible because of trade agreements. Without them, cars would cost much more, and production would be much slower. This shows how trade supports industries on both sides.
Another important area of trade is electronics. Many electronic devices like televisions, computers, and smartphones are built with parts made in both countries. Factories in Mexico produce many of these products, while U.S. companies supply technology and design. Together, they create a strong supply chain. This cooperation helps lower prices for consumers and provides jobs for workers in both nations. It also shows how connected the modern world really is.
Agriculture is also deeply linked through trade. Mexico exports fruits, vegetables, and other farm products to the United States. For example, avocados, tomatoes, and berries are often grown in Mexico and sold in U.S. supermarkets. At the same time, the United States exports corn, soybeans, and meat products to Mexico. This exchange ensures that people in both countries have access to a wide variety of food. It also supports farmers and businesses who depend on cross-border sales.
Oil and energy are another key part of the relationship. Mexico is a major supplier of crude oil to the United States, while the U.S. exports refined petroleum products back to Mexico. This back-and-forth trade supports energy security and keeps both economies running. In addition, renewable energy projects, such as wind and solar, are starting to create new opportunities for cooperation. Geography and history may have shaped the border, but trade and energy now drive much of the relationship.
For English learners, it is also useful to look at how trade supports jobs. Millions of workers in the United States and Mexico are connected to cross-border industries. For example, Mexican workers build parts for cars that are sold in the United States. U.S. workers create software and technology that are used in Mexican businesses. Truck drivers, factory workers, farmers, and office employees all play a role. This means that trade agreements are not just about governments. They affect ordinary people.
We should also remember that trade encourages cooperation. When two countries depend on each other for goods and jobs, they have more reason to solve problems peacefully. Disagreements still happen, but trade creates a strong motivation to keep the relationship stable. For the United States and Mexico, this cooperation is especially important because they share such a long border and such deep cultural ties. Trade builds trust and makes it harder for the two countries to separate their futures.
At the same time, trade is not without difficulties. Economic changes, like rising costs or global crises, can put stress on industries. Political disagreements sometimes create tension too. Yet, the overall picture is clear. Trade has made the U.S.-Mexico relationship one of the strongest in the world. From NAFTA to the USMCA, from cars to avocados, from electronics to oil, the exchange of goods and services has tied the two countries together in ways that are almost impossible to undo.
So, to summarize, trade is the heart of modern U.S.-Mexico relations. The creation of NAFTA in 1994 opened the door to free trade, while the USMCA in 2020 updated the rules for a new era. Trade in cars, Electronics, agriculture, and energy supports millions of jobs and connects the daily lives of people in both nations. Without these agreements, goods would be more expensive, choices would be fewer, and opportunities would be lost. Trade shows us how geography and history lead to cooperation in the present.
And dear listeners, as English learners, think about the vocabulary we have used in this section. Words like agreement, tariffs, exports, imports, supply chain, and labor protections. These are all useful terms for discussing economics and international relations. By practicing them, you not only improve your English, but also gain the ability to join global conversations. In the next section, we will move from trade to another important issue: immigration and the human stories behind it.
Dear listeners, in this part of our discussion, we turn to one of the most sensitive and important aspects of U.S. Mexico relations: immigration. This subject is deeply connected to human lives, economic opportunities, and cultural exchange. For decades, people have been moving across the U.S. Mexico border for many different reasons, and understanding these reasons gives us a better picture of the challenges and opportunities both countries face today.
Immigration between Mexico and the United States has a very long history. Many people from Mexico decide to move north in search of better job opportunities, stronger education systems, or to reunite with their families. Some go through legal channels, applying for visas and permanent residency, while others take more difficult and uncertain paths. What is important to understand here is not only the policies, but also the human stories behind these movements.
For example, one of the biggest reasons for migration is economic opportunity. The United States has a strong economy that offers more jobs in industries like construction, agriculture, hospitality, and services. Many families in Mexico see the possibility of higher wages in the U.S. as a chance to improve their quality of life. This is why you will often hear about people working very hard in the United States and sending money back home to their relatives in Mexico.
Exactly, Adam. These money transfers are called remittances. Remittances play a huge role in the Mexican economy. Families use this money to buy food, pay for education, improve their homes, or even start small businesses. According to many studies, billions of dollars flow from the United States to Mexico each year through remittances. This shows us how the movement of people is not just about individuals, but also about the wider economic connections between the two nations.
Another important point to consider is family reunification. Many people in Mexico have relatives who already live in the United States. Some have been there for years, even decades. Naturally, families want to stay together. So, immigration often happens because brothers, sisters, parents, and children want to be close to one another. This is a very human part of the story, reminding us that behind statistics are real people with hopes, emotions, and dreams.
Immigration also brings cultural exchange. When people move, they take their traditions, food, language, and music with them. In the United States, Mexican culture has become a vital part of daily life. From Mexican restaurants and festivals to bilingual schools and community centers, the influence is everywhere. At the same time, returning migrants bring back experiences and knowledge from the United States to Mexico, which creates a two-way cultural flow.
Of course, immigration also brings challenges. Governments need to manage borders, create fair systems for legal migration, and deal with the pressures that large movements of people can create on housing, schools, and healthcare. Some communities in the United States have debates about immigration policies, and there are different opinions on how best to manage them. However, many experts agree that migrants play a very important role in the American economy and society.
Let's not forget the personal challenges migrants face. Moving to a new country is never easy. Migrants may struggle with language barriers, cultural differences, or even discrimination. At the same time, they often work very hard, sometimes in difficult conditions, to build a better future. These struggles highlight the courage and resilience of individuals who decide to leave their homeland to seek new opportunities in another country.
A powerful example is how migrant workers support the agricultural sector in the United States. Many farms depend on labor from Mexican workers. These workers help plant, grow, and harvest fruits and vegetables that end up on dinner tables across the country. Without their contribution, many industries would face serious challenges. So, immigration is not only a personal story, but also a story of how economies depend on each other.
What I find most interesting is how immigration creates blended communities. In border states like Texas, California, and Arizona, you can clearly see how Mexican and American traditions mix together. Families celebrate both American and Mexican holidays, schools teach in two languages, and businesses often serve both communities. This mixture makes border areas dynamic and rich in culture, showing how immigration can shape the identity of entire regions.
When we look at immigration historically, we can see that it is not a new story. People have been moving across the U.S. Mexico border for generations. Policies and rules may have changed, but the basic reasons, work, family, opportunity, and hope, remain very similar. By learning this, we begin to understand that immigration is part of a larger human story that connects the past with the present.
Immigration also teaches us an important lesson in empathy. When we hear about someone crossing a border, we should try to imagine the reasons and sacrifices behind their decision. For many migrants, it is not a simple choice. It can mean leaving their homes, their loved ones, and their familiar surroundings to face an uncertain future. Remembering the human side helps us approach this issue with compassion, as well as knowledge.
For English learners, this topic also gives us useful vocabulary. Words like migration, remittances, opportunity, resilience, and family reunification are all key terms when discussing immigration. Learning these words helps you not only understand the subject, but also express your own thoughts in English more clearly. It shows us that studying real-world topics can help improve both language and global understanding.
So, as we can see, immigration is not just a matter of crossing a line on a map. It is a story of people, dreams, work, and cultural blending. It is also a topic that reminds us of the close ties between the United States and Mexico. By studying it carefully, we gain insights into economics, culture, and human resilience. This makes the topic valuable for students, researchers, and, of course, English learners like our listeners.
Exactly, Julia. And this is why immigration remains a central part of U.S. Mexico relations. It brings both challenges and opportunities, and it connects the two countries in deep and meaningful ways. For our listeners, we hope this section helps you not only learn new English words, but also think more deeply about the lives and experiences of people on both sides of the border. Now, dear listeners, we come to a subject that often appears in the news and shapes the daily lives of people living near the border: security and border control. The U.S. Mexico border is one of the busiest borders in the world. Every day, thousands of cars, trucks, and people cross it legally for work, trade, tourism, or family visits. At the same time, governments face challenges in ensuring that this border is secure and safe.
That's right, Adam. Managing such a long border, almost 2,000 miles, is not easy. On one side, officials must make sure that goods and people can move freely when they follow the rules. On the other side, they need to stop illegal activities such as smuggling, trafficking, or other crimes. Finding the right balance between security and openness is not simple, but it is necessary for both nations to protect their citizens while supporting trade and cooperation.
When we talk about border control, one of the first things that comes to mind is infrastructure. This includes checkpoints, inspection stations, fences, surveillance systems, and technology like cameras and sensors. The U.S. has invested heavily in border security to monitor who enters and exits. But technology alone is not enough. Human cooperation between law enforcement agencies from both countries is essential to ensure safety and fairness at the border.
Another important factor is the enormous amount of trade that moves across the border every day. Millions of dollars worth of goods pass through ports of entry, such as Laredo in Texas or Tijuana, San Diego in California. These goods include food, cars, electronics, and raw materials. Border control has to make sure this trade flows smoothly, because if security checks are too slow or restrictive, businesses and workers on both sides can be harmed.
Absolutely, Julia. One way both governments manage this is through special agreements and programs that make trade more efficient without reducing safety. For example, Trusted Traveler and Trusted Trader programs allow companies and individuals with a record of following rules to pass through border checks more quickly. This helps reduce delays while still maintaining strict controls on who and what is crossing the border.
Security is not only about goods, but also about people. Many people travel daily across the border for work, education, or family visits. Cities like El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, or San Diego and Tijuana, are closely linked communities. Border policies need to recognize that these people are part of a shared social and economic system. If movement becomes too restricted, it can harm both sides of the border and reduce cooperation between communities.
Another area of cooperation is fighting organized crime. Criminal groups sometimes try to use the border for illegal activities such as drug trafficking or human smuggling. These activities create dangers for both nations. To address this, U.S. and Mexican authorities share intelligence, conduct joint operations, and train officers to improve border safety. International cooperation shows that no single country can handle these issues alone.
At the same time, we must remember that security is not just about stopping crime. It is also about protecting human lives. Migrants who cross through deserts or rivers often face dangerous conditions. Cooperation between the U.S. and Mexico includes rescue operations, medical assistance, and humanitarian programs to reduce harm. This reminds us that security policies must consider not only laws, but also the safety and dignity of individuals.
Some people believe that stronger walls or more officers are the main answer, while others argue that smart technology, better cooperation, and more legal pathways for migration are equally important. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. A balanced approach must allow safe travel and trade while blocking dangerous activities. This balance is a constant challenge and requires ongoing dialogue between leaders, agencies, and communities.
Yes, and this balance is not static. It changes with time. For example, during global events like the COVID-19 pandemic, border policies became stricter to limit travel. At other times, when trade agreements like USMCA came into effect, both sides worked on making crossings faster to encourage economic growth. So, security and openness must adjust to new realities, while still respecting the basic principles of cooperation and human rights.
It's also useful to see the border not as a line of separation, but as a shared responsibility. The United States and Mexico are partners, and both have an interest in making sure the border is secure yet functional. This partnership extends beyond law enforcement into areas like training, information sharing, and even cultural understanding. When officers and agencies from both nations trust one another, they can solve problems more effectively.
For English learners listening today, here are some important words to remember: border control, surveillance, cooperation, organized crime, and humanitarian. These words are used in discussions about international security. By learning them, you not only improve your vocabulary, but also your ability to understand global news and debates. Practicing these words will make you more confident when talking about world affairs in English.
To sum up this section, border security is complex. It is not only about fences and patrols, it is also about trade, travel, human rights, and international cooperation. Both the U.S. and Mexico must continue to work together to manage their shared border. The challenge is always finding the right balance between safety and openness. And for us as learners, this topic gives valuable lessons about responsibility, cooperation, and the power of communication.
Exactly, Adam. The story of border security reminds us that every challenge is also an opportunity. When two nations work together, they can keep their people safe, encourage economic growth, and build trust across communities. And for our listeners, learning about this topic is not only useful for English practice, but also for understanding how international relations shape our everyday world.
Dear listeners, after discussing security, let us now explore something that brings warmth, joy, and connection between the United States and Mexico: cultural exchange. The border is not only a dividing line, but also a meeting place where traditions, food, music, and language flow in both directions. In fact, the cultural ties between these two countries are so strong that you cannot imagine one without the influence of the other.
That is beautifully said, Adam. One of the most visible examples of cultural exchange is food. Mexican cuisine has become a beloved part of American life. Tacos, burritos, enchiladas, and guacamole are not just dishes. They are symbols of shared identity. In cities across the U.S., from Los Angeles to Chicago, Mexican restaurants serve both migrants and locals, creating spaces where communities celebrate flavor, heritage, and togetherness.
And it does not stop there, Julia. American culture has also influenced life in Mexico. Fast food chains, Hollywood films, and pop music are popular across Mexican cities. This shows us how culture travels in both directions. While Mexican traditions enrich daily life in the U.S., American media and lifestyle trends reach Mexico, shaping youth culture, fashion, and entertainment. This exchange is not one-sided, but rather a constant dialogue between neighbors.
Music is another powerful area of connection. Think about genres like mariachi, norteño, or ranchera. These traditional Mexican styles are loved not only in Mexico, but also in Mexican-American communities in the United States. At the same time, American pop, rock, and hip-hop influence young artists in Mexico. The result is a creative blend where new sounds are born, combining rhythms from both sides of the border to reach international audiences.
Celebrations are also worth mentioning. Cinco de Mayo, though more widely celebrated in the United States than in many parts of Mexico, has become a cultural event that brings people together to honor Mexican heritage. Meanwhile, the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, has grown in visibility across the U.S., inspiring festivals, parades, and even Hollywood films. These traditions travel across borders and help people connect through shared celebrations.
Beyond festivals and food, language plays a central role in cultural exchange. Spanish is the second most spoken language in the United States, thanks to Mexican and Latin American communities. Many American children grow up speaking both English and Spanish, becoming bilingual at an early age. In Mexico, English is taught in schools, and many young people use it in business, tourism, or online communication. This creates bridges of understanding between the two cultures.
The border cities are perhaps the best examples of cultural blending. Take San Diego and Tijuana, or El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. In these areas, families often live on both sides. Businesses serve customers in two languages, and music, art, and daily life reflect a mixture of influences. Walking through these cities, you may hear conversations switching naturally from English to Spanish, see murals that mix cultural symbols, and taste dishes that combine local traditions.
Cultural exchange is not just about food or music, it is also about values and ways of life. For instance, Mexican family traditions, where gatherings are large and close-knit, have influenced how communities in the United States celebrate holidays. At the same time, American approaches to technology, entrepreneurship, and education inspire young people in Mexico to to think about new opportunities for the future. This mutual influence makes both societies stronger.
Another important aspect is sports. Soccer, or football as it is called in Mexico, is hugely popular. In the U.S., soccer has gained much more attention in recent decades, partly because of Mexican and Latin American communities. On the other hand, American sports like baseball and basketball are followed passionately in Mexico. These shared interests create moments when people on both sides cheer together, bridging cultural gaps through the love of the game.
We should also highlight art and literature. Mexican authors, painters, and filmmakers are celebrated worldwide, and their works often reach audiences in the U.S. Famous figures like Frida Kahlo or Octavio Paz continue to inspire generations. Meanwhile, American literature, films, and visual arts are widely consumed in Mexico, sometimes adapted into local styles. This constant exchange of ideas builds deeper appreciation for creativity across cultures.
Cultural exchange even extends into education. Universities along the border often run joint programs where students from both sides study together. Language classes, exchange semesters, and collaborative research projects bring young people into direct contact with another culture. These educational exchanges prepare students to work in international settings and to appreciate diversity as a strength rather than a barrier.
For English learners, cultural topics provide excellent vocabulary. Words like heritage, bilingual, traditions, exchange, and celebration are all connected to this theme. By practicing these words, learners can better describe the richness of cultural life, both in their own countries and in international contexts. Talking about culture in English also helps students feel more confident in conversations about everyday life, travel, or global issues.
What makes this cultural connection so inspiring is that it shows us how borders do not always divide people. Sometimes they unite them. Through music, food, art, sports, and language, people from the U.S. and Mexico have built a shared identity. This identity is not limited to governments or laws, but is lived daily in families, communities, and friendships. It reminds us that culture is one of the strongest bridges between nations.
Well said, Adam. And for our listeners, we encourage you to think about cultural exchanges in your own lives. Maybe you enjoy food, music, or films from another country. Perhaps you study a foreign language or celebrate international holidays. These small moments are part of a larger process that connects people across the world. The U.S. Mexico example shows us how powerful cultural exchange can be when two societies live so closely together.
To conclude this section, let's remember that cultural exchange is more than entertainment. It is about understanding, respect, and shared humanity. The U.S. and Mexico may face challenges in politics or economics, but their cultural ties remain strong and unbreakable. For English learners, studying this exchange is a chance to gain not only language skills, but also a broader perspective on the world. That, dear listeners, is the true power of culture. Dear listeners, now we turn to the social and economic challenges that affect both the United States and Mexico, especially near the border. While trade, culture, and migration bring opportunities, there are also serious issues such as poverty, inequality, and employment challenges. These problems affect millions of people and shape how governments, communities, and families make decisions every day.
That's correct, Adam. Poverty remains a major concern, particularly in certain regions of Mexico. Many families struggle to earn enough money for basic needs, such as food, housing, and healthcare. On the other side of the border, some U.S. communities face inequality, where access to high-paying jobs, education, and services is limited for certain groups, including migrants and low-income families. These social gaps can affect long-term development for both nations.
One way Mexico has been able to reduce the impact of poverty is through remittances. These are funds sent home by Mexican workers who live and work in the United States. Every year, billions of dollars flow back to families in Mexico. These remittances help pay for food, education, housing, and small businesses. They are a lifeline for many families, showing how migration and economic connection create important social and economic links. Healthcare is also closely linked to social and economic challenges. Migrant families, especially those with low incomes, may have limited access to medical services. In Mexico, rural areas often lack doctors, clinics, and hospitals. In the United States, migrants may not have health insurance or may fear accessing services due to immigration concerns. These challenges affect communities' overall well-being and their ability to grow economically.
Inequality in income and access to resources can also create social tensions. People may feel left behind when opportunities are concentrated in certain cities, industries, or social groups. This is why governments on both sides of the border focus on programs to reduce inequality, support education and healthcare, and provide social safety nets. Addressing inequality is essential for creating stable communities and fostering long-term growth.
Another important factor is urbanization. Many people move to border cities seeking jobs, education, or services. While cities like Tijuana, Ciudad Juarez, El Paso, and San Diego are vibrant and growing, rapid urbanization can put pressure on housing, transportation, sanitation, and social services. Managing these changes requires careful planning and collaboration between municipalities, states, and national governments.
Migration also affects family structures and social networks. In some cases, parents may work far from home, leaving children in the care of relatives. While this creates economic opportunities, it can also cause social challenges, such as emotional stress or limited access to schooling. Communities, NGOs, and governments often provide support services to address these issues, but gaps remain. These human aspects of social and economic challenges are often overlooked in policy discussions.
Long-term development is closely linked to these social and economic factors. Poverty, inequality, and limited access to education or healthcare can slow economic growth, reduce social mobility, and create cycles of disadvantage. At the same time, remittances, migration, and cross-border collaboration can provide opportunities for improvement. Understanding these dynamics helps us see how individual lives and national economies are deeply interconnected.
For English learners, this section also provides important vocabulary. Words like inequality, remittances, urbanization, safety nets, social mobility, and development. These terms are essential for discussing social issues, economics, and international relations. By learning and practicing them, you gain tools to better describe real-world challenges in English and participate in informed conversations about global topics.
To summarize, social and economic challenges at the U.S. Mexico border are complex and interconnected. Poverty, limited employment opportunities, education gaps, and healthcare difficulties affect both nations. Remittances and migration play key roles in supporting families, while urbanization and inequality create ongoing challenges. Addressing these issues requires cooperation, planning, and attention to the human stories behind the statistics.
Dear listeners, understanding these social and economic challenges is crucial for anyone studying international relations, economics, or global society. It also shows us that language learning is not only about grammar or vocabulary. By learning English through real-world topics, we connect language skills with knowledge about the world. In the next section, we will explore environmental and border-related issues, including water, pollution, and sustainable development.
Dear listeners, as we reach the final section of our discussion, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we have explored about U.S. Mexico relations. From the geography of the nearly 2,000-mile border to trade agreements, immigration, cultural exchange, social challenges, and future cooperation, each topic shows how closely connected these two nations are. Understanding these connections helps us see the bigger picture of international relations in the real world.
Absolutely, Adam. Today we discussed how geography influences travel, trade, and migration. We explored the historical events that shaped the border, from early colonization to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We also examined economic ties, including NAFTA and USMCA, and the impact of imports and exports on jobs and communities. Each topic shows how intertwined economies and societies are, and how learning about these connections is valuable for English learners.
We also focused on immigration and the human stories behind it. Families seeking opportunity, migrants sending remittances, and communities adapting to new cultural dynamics illustrate the human side of international relations. By understanding migration, we not only learn about policies, but also develop empathy and insight into the lived experiences of people on both sides of the border. This makes studying global topics more meaningful and engaging.
Cultural exchange was another important theme. Food, music, art, language, celebrations, and education programs create bridges between the United States and Mexico. These shared experiences show how culture connects people across borders. For English learners, studying cultural topics introduces useful vocabulary, helps improve comprehension, and encourages communication about everyday life and global issues in English.
We also covered social and economic challenges, including poverty, inequality, education, and healthcare. Understanding these issues helps learners see the complex realities that affect communities. Remittances and migration show how people support families and economies, while urbanization and access to services highlight ongoing challenges. These lessons are useful not only for learning English, but also for developing critical thinking and global awareness.
Border security and cooperation reminded us that managing international relations is about balance. Protecting communities while enabling trade, travel, and human connection requires planning, technology, and trust. Collaboration between law enforcement, governments, and communities illustrates the importance of dialogue and partnership. Learning about these topics helps English learners discuss policies, safety, and international challenges in an informed way.
Looking ahead, cooperation in areas like trade, technology, environment, education, and renewable energy shows the potential for growth and innovation. Youth exchanges, joint research, and cross-border projects build a strong foundation for the future. Positive relations benefit both nations economically, socially, and culturally. For learners of English, studying these future trends introduces new vocabulary, ideas, and expressions that are useful for academic, professional, and personal growth.
One of the key lessons for English learners is that language and knowledge go hand in hand. By studying real-world topics like U.S. Mexico relations, you expand your vocabulary, learn expressions for discussing complex issues, and practice comprehension skills. Words like cooperation, remittances, immigration, sustainability, and exchange programs are not just academic terms. They help you participate in meaningful conversations about the world.
Another lesson is the value of global understanding. Learning about other countries, cultures, and challenges teaches empathy, respect, and curiosity. When you can describe events, policies, and human experiences in English, you become part of an international conversation. This skill is powerful, whether you are traveling, studying, working, or connecting with friends online from different countries.
Dear listeners, we encourage you to practice the new vocabulary and expressions we discussed today. Try using them in sentences, write short essays, or discuss these topics with friends. Language learning becomes more effective and enjoyable when connected to real-world knowledge. Each word you learn opens a door to understanding people, places, and ideas around the globe.
As we end this podcast, remember that learning is a journey, just like exploring international relations. Every piece of knowledge, every new word, every conversation brings you closer to understanding the world and yourself. The relationship between the United States and Mexico shows us the power of cooperation, respect, and shared human experience.
And finally, dear listeners, let us leave you with an uplifting thought. Language learning and global understanding go hand in hand. By practicing English, studying cultures, and connecting with international stories, you are building friendships and bridges across borders. Keep exploring, keep learning, and remember that every effort you make brings you closer to becoming a confident, informed, and compassionate global citizen.
Thank you for joining us at the English Globe. We hope you enjoyed this journey through U.S. Mexico relations and learned not only new English words, but also valuable lessons about cooperation, culture, and global understanding. Keep practicing, stay curious, and remember that knowledge and language are powerful tools for building connections.
Yes, thank you, listeners. Until next time, continue your journey of learning, exploring new cultures, and practicing English. The world is full of stories waiting for you, and each new word you learn helps you understand them better. We hope this podcast inspired you to think critically, speak confidently, and appreciate the importance of international friendship and collaboration.